And once these judges get into their position, they have this sense of entitlement.
Doug Ford slams judges in Ontario over bail and bike lane injunctions and floats the idea of electing them. What the Premier said and how it's being received, that's coming up tonight.
And we're following a TDSB budget meeting this hour as Canada's largest school board looks for solutions to its $58 million deficit. The board considering some serious cuts to programming.
Plus, Leafs fans are being tested once again after the team failed to close out the series against the Sens last night. What's going on? And can they finally get it done tomorrow night? We'll have a preview.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latafat. Thanks for joining us here on Live at 5. Doug Ford not holding back today when it came to his thoughts on some Ontario judges. The Premier using the battle over Toronto bike lanes as an example while lashing out at an announcement this morning.
And CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us with more. Beatrice, the Premier is calling for an American-style approach to picking judges.
He is. The Premier today saying maybe it's time we take a note from our friends south of the border and have judges be elected like they are in the U.S. The opposition leaders, though, saying this is a slippery slope and that this is not the United States. We shouldn't be doing Trump-style politics. The Premier, though, saying these judges are pushing back against his agenda and maybe they should be democratically elected. Here's a bit of the rant. The Premier says he's been holding in for some 7 years now. Listen.
I've just had it. We get elected to move forward, and some judge, because of the ideology, decides, well, let's put an injunction on bike lanes. You got to be kidding me. The system is broken. And I apologize to all the great judges, all the great JPs, but the system is broken, and we have to change the system.
So this was part of the Premier's rant, not only on bike lanes, but on judges, he says, are too lenient on repeat offenders here in this province. But on bike lanes, I mean, last week, a judge issued a temporary injunction against the removal of these bike lanes here on Bloor, where I am tonight, along Yonge and along University. The Premier's quote directly, Bakari and Lena, was, don't these judges have something other to worry about other than bike lanes? Clearly a lot of frustration there from the Premier today. The official opposition leader, though, and the other opposition leaders saying it's not judges' jobs to be led by political, motives. It's their job to uphold the Constitution and the right of law and the rule of law. Here's more from official opposition leader Marit Stiles.
It's really concerning, right? The Premier's comments about politicizing or electing judges is actually quite dangerous, I would say. He seems to have some sort of vendetta against anybody who disagrees with him, even if they're, in the judiciary. And, my warning and my message to Doug Ford today is we don't want to be the 51st state, and we don't want to import their Americanized court system into our country either.
Marit Stiles calling the Premier's comments un-Canadian. In fact, he took one step further, Lena and Bakari, calling on any judges who are nearing retirement, retire today. I'll just pay you out to get out of the system. Those are the Premier's words. Back to you.
The Premier did not mince words today. Beatrice, thanks so much. And those comments taking place during an announcement about strengthening our bail system.
And the province says that it'll make legislative changes to improve and increase the collection of forfeited bail money. It also intends to create teams of prosecutors who will handle bail hearings involving serious and violent crimes. The government says it'll launch a review of the bail system as well to make it more effective. And Premier Doug Ford is calling the current system broken and put much of the blame on the backs of judges.
And Ontario Police Association President Mark Baxter is welcoming the province's efforts to reform the bail system.
We have a bail system that is failing to prioritize the safety of victims and our members, where we have a system where repeat and violent offenders, there's this revolving door. They get arrested for committing a violent offense or a repeat offense, and they're arrested and they're back out on the street the next day, sometimes even the same day before the officers are done their paperwork at their
Well, the government says that it'll introduce the legislative changes later this week.
And joining us now for more reaction to Ford's comments and his bail reform announcement today is Shakir Rahim, director of the Criminal Justice Program at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Shakir, thanks so much for making time for us here on Live at 5. What is your response to the Premier's comments today when he says the system is broken?
Well, I think the Premier's comments were concerning for a number of reasons. First, any time judicial independence comes under attack, it should give us pause. Judges being able to make decisions without thinking about the reaction of a politician or the powerful is important to ensure that all of our rights and freedoms are upheld. In terms of the bail system, I would note that right now in Ontario prisons, over 80% of the people held are waiting for their day in court. And that is a sharp rise from where the number used to be many years ago, where it could be around 20 or 30%. So the notion that bail is being handed out left, right, and center simply isn't true. What we need is for the government to collect the data about the operation of the bail system necessary so that we can make any changes based on evidence.
Okay, so you mentioned, that percentage, 80%, those who are still waiting for more in the justice system. What about the victims, those who have been victimized by people out on bail?
Well, we think that it's important that before we change the system altogether, that we know, for example, what number of people of those who are released on bail are actually reoffending, and what happened in those particular circumstances. So we should look at those high-profile incidents that we do hear about and determine how we can make changes. But it is necessary to ensure that we uphold important rights in our criminal justice system, like the presumption of innocence, that we don't act too harshly. As you know, the Premier and his government also has called for bail to be eliminated for certain offenses, including murder. And you might recall that Umar Zamir, who was acquitted by a jury in the deaths of police officers in downtown Toronto, was charged with that offense, and everybody decried his decision to be released on bail, but he was an innocent man facing a weak case. So it's important we make changes that are based on sound evidence for this reason, so our rights, freedoms, and protections aren't compromised.
I do want to point out that the NDP has said today that the Premier's politicization of judges, that's what they're calling it, is a dangerous thing to do. I want to ask you if you would support us following an American model in which we elect judges as opposed to appointing them. Do you have any concerns about what the Premier said on that front today?
I think there are good reasons for us not having judges be subject to popular elections. Most importantly, so that where they have to make a decision that follows the law, but may be unpopular among some, they don't feel pressured not to make the right call. But I'd note importantly that what the Premier said today was that judges who are not elected lack legitimacy. And that is a real issue, because when you start suggesting that judges, because they're not elected, may not have the legitimacy to interpret or apply the law, that opens the door on a dangerous road where we no longer respect judicial decisions and the judiciary. And we can see not far from us where that road leads.
Okay. Shakir Rahim, director of the Criminal Justice Program at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's now 5:08, 12 degrees. Let's get a check on the drive with our traffic specialist, Adjoa Nsiayabwa. I know what you're going to say.
Oh, it's busy out there. It's busy and there's a lot of problems, Lena Bakari. So drivers heading out, patience is what you're going to need to pack as you make your way out on the major routes. We will start with these problems slowing down the drive on the Gardner westbound. They've been here for some time. Gardner westbound through actually the construction zone. Just as you make your way through Jameson, it is the left lane that is out following this collision. So that is impacting the drive as you try to get out of the downtown core from well before Cherry Street. That camera went out. Cameras that are working and where there are problems on the northbound lanes of the Don Valley Parkway. This is on the approach to Eglinton. Pretty serious collision involving a GO bus. It looks like they're waiting on another GO bus to transport those passengers, and that is slowing down the drive from about Dundas up towards that scene. Bayview Extension, a good alternative. Headed towards the 401. This is if you're traveling on the westbound side, actually, just through the 400. It looks like we are dealing with a stall. It does have the left lane blocked and problems coming into the traffic desk. yes, my camera went out, so I'll just talk about them. Eastbound on the 401 through Dixon Martin Grove, crews on scene of a pretty serious collision that is taking out the left lane. So yes, very busy afternoon. Lena and Bakari.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
Halton police are investigating a deadly shooting in Burlington.
It happened just before 8:30 last night outside of a restaurant near Brant and Fairview. Police say a man in his 50s was found suffering from gunshot wounds in a parking lot. He was rushed to hospital where he was later pronounced dead.
And police have released this image of a suspect vehicle in the shooting. It's a gray, newer model Honda Civic. It has dark window tint and black alloy rims. Investigators say that the victim was specifically targeted.
It's going to be traumatic, I'm sure, for everybody that was there. It's not something that you're going to expect when you're dining at a restaurant to have something like that occur. So, again, it would be a traumatic experience. I can only imagine, never having experienced that myself, what people must have gone through having that occur right in front of them like that, or close proximity. But obviously, that's something our officers would have to deal with upon arrival, which obviously adds to the chaos of the scene.
And police are asking witnesses or anybody with dash cam footage to come forward.
And progress is being made to restore power while repair work continues after yesterday's pretty violent storm.
Yeah, it was brief but pretty intense. And this is what it looked like on a street in Scarborough this morning. This is on Miramar Crescent near Lawrence and Brimley. A large tree you can see knocked over onto a pair of cars, causing extensive damage. Thankfully, no injuries there.
The storm, it did move through the city very quickly, in some cases completely uprooting trees, just like this one in North York. Says at 7 last night, there were about 27,000 Toronto Hydro customers without power throughout the city. A lot of it has been restored, to most of them with just under 400 still in dark this evening.
It's 5:11 now, 12 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
Doug Ford talking more than just judges and bail reform today. Coming up, the Premier's latest comments about Pierre Poilievre and the federal Conservatives following Monday's election. And Premier Doug Ford was asked about his relationship with Pierre Poilievre and the federal Conservatives. This was during a news conference in Brampton this morning.
I shouldn't interfere in the federal election. Last time I checked, Pierre Poilievre never came out in our election. Matter of fact, him or one of his lieutenants told every one of his members, "Don't you dare go out and help the PCs." Isn't that ironic? But anyways, I'm not going to dig deep into this. The people spoke, and I have no say in who people vote for.
Now, Ford and Poilievre have been at odds for weeks. This is no secret. Tensions grew when Ford's campaign manager, Corey Tenike, publicly criticized Poilievre's campaign for losing a significant lead in the polls, describing it as campaign malpractice at the highest level. The Conservatives under Poilievre had their best showing in popular support since 1988, but still fell to the Liberals in the final results.
Well, speaking of, in a major election night upset, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre lost his Ottawa area seat to Liberal candidate Bruce Fanjoy.
Yeah, the riding also saw the highest number of advanced voters than anywhere else in the country. Bruce Fanjoy joins us live now with more on his big win. Congratulations to you. Take us back to Monday night, if you can, when you were watching all the results come in. What was that like, and did you get any sleep?
It was a night that we had been working on for a long time. Personally, I've been at this for over 2 years. It was very excited. Our volunteers, of which there were hundreds and hundreds, were very excited because they had been part of this campaign, had heard the conversations at doors around Carleton. So we felt good going into the election. We knew we were competitive, but ultimately at the end of a campaign, you put your faith in voters, and so we were waiting for the results to come in, and when they first started to come in for Carleton, it was very excited because we could see that what we had been doing all this time was resonating with voters.
Okay, so speaking of resonating with voters, look, Pierre Poilievre represented Carleton for 20 years. So, how do you take on this rival in terms of the messaging on the campaign trail, especially when, there was a lot of talk of, hey, we need something other than a Liberal government this time around?
Well, in Carleton, there was a lot of talk of we need someone other than Pierre Poilievre. He had represented the riding for over 20 years, 10 of which he was in government himself, and people were hard pressed to come up with anything he had accomplished, either at the riding level or at the national level. So I think that there was a significant amount of fatigue with Pierre Poilievre and his style of negative politics, and that was a big part of the story here in Carleton. But we also people recognized that. We were facing a critical situation because of the election of Donald Trump and his choice to impose tariffs on Canada and nations around the world. He's also threatened our sovereignty. So people in Carleton, as was the case across the country, recognized that this was a moment that required serious, competent leadership. They saw that in Mark Carney. They saw how hard I was working and my volunteers were working here in Carleton. Meanwhile, Pierre was nowhere to be found. I think they made their decision on that basis.
I want to point out that there were 90 people on the ballot in your riding. This was not an easy race to enter. There were reports a few days before Election Day that things were looking a little bit competitive. And a lot of conservatives said that was just spin coming from the other parties. Were you surprised on Election night? Did you actually think you were going to win?
So I've known for a long time that we were in this race. That we were competitive. That's what happens when you're present, when you're talking to thousands upon thousands of Carleton voters. I knew we were in this race. For some reason, people believe that Pierre Poilievre, because he's Pierre Poilievre, was invincible. That's not how democracy works. Pierre Poilievre went into this election with the same number of votes that I did. The only difference was that he was never here and I was always here. And he was never knocking on doors and I was knocking on doors all the time, except I also had a small army of volunteers who joined me to do so as well, because people recognized that this was the most important election of our lifetimes. And that in Carleton we had a remarkable opportunity to show what kind of Canada we were going to fight for. And so the Pierre Poilievre's style of politics had worn thin here in Carleton, as it had for many people across Canada. And we presented a positive alternative to that, and people responded.
Okay, Bruce Fanjoy winning in Carleton. It's 5:20, 12 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Well, coming up, we'll take you to TDSB headquarters, where a meeting is taking place right now. That is where budget cuts are on the agenda. Those details are next. Welcome back. Significant cuts are being discussed by the Toronto District School Board tonight in a bid to address a $58 million budget deficit. This comes after the new education minister accused the TDSB of financial mismanagement.
Okay, CP24 Sijalou has more.
Lena Bakari, the TDSB is facing some serious money problems right now. They have a $58 million budget deficit, and just last week, the province launched a financial investigation into the spending concerns here at the school board. And that's why right now the budget committee is meeting inside the boardroom this hour to discuss how to make up for the shortfall. Now, one of the recommended cuts has to do with pool programming, and it's getting a lot of backlash from the community. So right now, the school board, they own 66 pools, 27 are leased to the city, 2 are leased to private programming, but the school board is proposing shutting down the remainder of the pools, which would be about 35 of them. They say this is a move that could save them $12.8 million. Another move the board is considering to make up for its budget deficit is getting rid of its 74 itinerant music instructors. These are music specialists that travel to different schools to help teachers and students. They say this is a move that would save them $5 million. Now, especially the cuts when it comes to pool programming, this is getting a lot of backlash. Councillor Josh Matlow, he launched a petition called Save the Pools. He says that pools are an essential part of the community, not just for students, but also for seniors, and that learning how to swim is also essential for a child's education. So in the next half hour, Lena and Bakari will be speaking to Councillor Josh Matlow and hopefully giving you an update on this meeting and what they're discussing.
All right, we look forward to that update and conversation. Thanks so much for this, Sija. It's 5:24, 12 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, we hear directly from the Maple Leafs about what went so terribly wrong last night in Game 5 as the Battle of Ontario heads back to Ottawa tomorrow. The Battle of Ontario, it rages on with the Leafs falling short in Game 5 against the Senators.
CP24's Lindsay Biscaya joins us live with more on how the team is processing their loss and how they're responding to it. Lindsay.
Well, the team itself, Lena and Bakari, seems to be responding quite positively to the loss. We've heard from the coach, Craig Berube, as well as some of the players, including Mitch Marner, one of the core four, and they sound quite positive, quite calm at this point in terms of how the team is doing. I wouldn't say the same for the fans, though. Obviously, Leafs fans starting to get into panic mode here after losing last night, and it wasn't even a close game. We're talking 4-0 for the Senators. So this is not ideal for Leafs fans who, felt like at the beginning of this series, the Leafs were just winning game after game, and the core four seemed to be playing the way they should be at the beginning of the series. That's always something we hear every year from Leafs fans and the team itself, is that the core four doesn't produce in the playoffs. We're talking about Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Tavares. And last night, it didn't seem like they were really pulling their weight, you would say, in this game. So we have heard from some of the players today and the coach, Craig Berube, talking about last night. Take a listen.
My job is try to get the best out of every player and the team, the best of my ability. And, that's what I try to do daily, whether it's now, game 30, game 10. So, we're, like I said, we're up 3-2 still in the series, and we went in there and won a game already. So we're capable of doing it, and I have a lot of belief in this team.
And a lot of the fans also have a lot of belief in this team, Lena and Bakari. But last night, not exactly the best game. Game 6, we know, is going to happen tomorrow in Ottawa at 7 p.m. So all eyes on that game. But interesting to note, too, this is a fact that it's not so fun. The Leafs actually have the longest Stanley Cup drought in the NHL out of all the teams. So it's kind of understandable at this point that Leafs fans are feeling desperate because they have not seen a win for their team out of the longest out of all of the fan bases in the NHL. So not exactly a record you want as a Leafs fan or for the team itself, but again, still time to turn this around. Back to you.
Live from the newsroom, CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. Thanks a lot. It's 5:29, 12 degrees. This is Live at 5.
And we are continuing to follow reaction to Doug Ford's fiery comments. He took aim at Ontario judges using the Toronto bike lane battle as an example. Stay with us for more.
And once these judges get into their position, they have this sense of entitlement. That's what.
Doug Ford, critical of judges in Ontario over bail and bike lane injunctions, floating the idea of electing them, what the Premier said and how it's being received. Coming up.
We are following a TDSB budget meeting this hour as Canada's largest school board looks for solutions to its $58 million deficit. The board considering some serious cuts to programming.
And last night's brief yet intense thunderstorm, it leaves many in the GTA still cleaning up. Some people still don't even have power today. We're going to take a look at the aftermath.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Lena Latafat.
Now, Bakari Savage. Kids at Toronto's largest school board, they could be seeing cuts to specialized music programs, along with the closure of some pools as the TDSB grapples with a multi-million-dollar deficit.
It's all up for discussion tonight at a crucial budget meeting. It's also where we find our Sija Liu this evening. Sija.
Lena Bakari, right now the TDSB is facing a $58 million shortfall, and that's why they are having this economic budget meeting right now to discuss how to make up for this deficit and balance the budget. One of the recommendations is to close nearly half of the pools that the school board owns and lay off 86 aquatic staff. But not everyone in the community is on board with this plan, including Councillor Josh Matlow, who is joining us live right now. Councillor Matlow, thanks so much for your time today. You launched a petition called Save the Pools. Why do you think the closure of pools is not the right solution when it comes to dealing with this budget deficit from the TDSB?
I believe the reality is that while the TDSB obviously needs to be accountable with every tax dollar that it's entrusted with, and the province needs to better adequately fund education in this city and in this province, our communities can't be left dry without our pools. They serve our kids. I've got a 12-year-old daughter. Many of us have kids who learn basic life-saving skills at our school pools. But in Toronto, school pools aren't just for our kids. In many hours of the evening and weekends, we have seniors and other community members who go there for exercise, yes, to learn life-saving skills. But let's remember, there are some people in our city who have cottages, who have backyard pools, but most people don't. Our pools in our neighborhoods are where people go to, enjoy that recreation. And we will be poor forward if they let these pools be shut down, because once they're closed, they'll never come back. So I'm asking Torontonians to write to their MPP. That's why I have a petition. You can find it at any of my social media accounts, and write to your MPP and say, it is so important that the province ensures that these pools have a future. We have community hubs. That's what's special about Toronto. It shouldn't just be about, the city or the school board versus the province funding and supporting these assets. We should ensure that they're in every neighborhood, and we should work together to make sure that they are.
And Councillor, this isn't the first time that pools were possibly at risk of getting closed. This also happened in 2008, like you mentioned in your petition. Can you remind us what happened in 2008 and how pools were eventually saved and the type of lesson you would like to learn from that?
Well, ever since the Mike Harris government really removed much of the TDSB's power, remember, the vast majority of their budget is what they call sweatered. In other words, the province essentially has control over most of the dollars that the school board has provided for our kids' education. That's why we don't have sufficient air conditioning. That's why we need more funding for a number of priorities. And they're not adequately equipped to provide what all of our kids need. So in 2008, we went through this very same thing. The province didn't fund the TDSB well enough. When I was on the board wanted then the city to start paying for more. And the city said, well, wait a sec, we're broke. And there was a real threat to the pools. We brought in former Mayor David Crombie. We brought in engaged citizens who wanted to focus on solutions. So rather than just say, please don't close them, we came up with ideas about how to bring in better revenue, more realistic permit fees, finding ways to make them more self-sufficient. And in the many years since then, the TDSB is back in the same scenario. So yes, those who will say the TDSB needs to do more to keep these pools going, that's fair. But they are inadequately funded, and we do need the province to step in and ensure that these pools have a line item, that they are not just a afterthought or something that can be expendable, but they're part of our kids' education. And anyone who either wants their kids to learn to swim or fears what would happen if they didn't have these skills, this is a part of education, because there's going to be a point in most of our kids' lives they're going to get to a body of water, and we want to make sure that they're safe and they know what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your thoughts on this issue. Appreciate it, Councillor Matlow.
Thank you.
And Lena Bakari, this meeting is still underway, but we'll send it back to you for now.
It's CP24, Sija Liu reporting live. Thanks, Sija. Right now it's 5:37. Let's get a check on the evening commute with CP24's traffic specialist, Adjoa Intia Yabwa. Adj.
Well, even more problems at Bakari that are impacting the drive this hour. So if you're trying to get out of Whitby, just spotted this collision. It's on the 401 westbound, just as you make your way on the approach to the 412. It's the two left lanes that are out following this crash. Again, if you're traveling towards the eastbound lanes of the 401, piece of the right lane was blocked at the collision through Dixon Martin Grove. It looks like it's in the process of clearing. Problems long-standing northbound on the Don Valley Parkway. This is on the approach to Eglinton. Collision has the left lane occupied. And if you're traveling towards the Gardner, long-standing collision as you try to get out of the downtown core. This is through the construction zone. Gardner westbound just through Jameson. Find that left lane out following a crash. Outside of camera view, we are dealing with a stall. This is on the eastbound at 401. It's happening through Avenue Road in the collectors. You'll find that right lane occupied. Lena Bakari, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Adjoa. Well, Doug Ford not holding back today when it comes to his thoughts on some Ontario judges. The Premier using the battle over Toronto bike lanes and bail reform as examples while lashing out at an announcement this morning.
And CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us with more. Beatrice.
Bakari, Lena, the Premier obviously upset with judges when it comes to repeat offenders, especially violent offenders going back on the street. We've heard him talk about that before. But today, the Premier turned up the volume when it comes to blasting these judges, especially when it comes to bike lanes. He says maybe it's time they are democratically elected to better align with public sentiment. Otherwise, the Premier says, what right do they have to control our budgets and our agendas, especially when it comes to these bike lanes? Here's more from the Premier today.
What right do they have, an unelected, politically appointed judges, determining our budgets? Because of the decisions the judges have made in the past have cost us $10 billion. And we ran on a mandate. We got elected democratically. Last time I checked, there hasn't been any judges elected. Maybe that's the problem. We should do what the U.S. does. Let's start electing our judges, holding them accountable.
It was just last week, Lena and Bakari, that a judge issued a temporary injunction against the removal of bike lanes on three major arteries that the Ford government has vowed they would tear them off, including Bloor, where we are this evening, University, and Yonge Street. The judge saying needed more time to consider whether the move would be unconstitutional. That was a claim brought forward, a challenge brought forward by a cycle group. The Premier today saying, hey, maybe it's time that Canada takes a page out of the U.S.'s books and has judges be elected. And that's when we're hearing official opposition and other opposition leaders saying this is a slippery slope. The Premier sounding a lot like Donald Trump, and the judge's job is not to be beholden to political leanings, but to uphold the right of law. Here's more from Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie.
People need to have confidence in our judiciary system. They need to know that their judges are fair, that they're independent, that they're qualified, and that they've been selected because of their merit. And I think this is very different than the system that is used in the United States, obviously, when they have elected judges. We here in Canada believe judges should be independent and selected for their merit. Here, judges can't be bought. So I think that distinguishes us, and I'm very concerned about the Premier not recognizing this in his comments this morning.
Mart Stiles calling it un-Canadian. You heard Bonnie Crombie there saying judges can't be bought. Well, guess what? The Premier's other comments today also raising eyebrows, Lena and Bakari. He says he does want to buy them out at their last few years before retirement, saying, I'll pay you out 1, 2, 3, 4 years. Just get out of the system. Some interesting comments today from the Premier for sure.
He certainly did not hold back. Beatrice, thanks so much for this. Well, thousands of people, they're still without power tonight following a severe storm that swept across the province yesterday afternoon.
Trees were toppled in the Bancroft area. This is where work's underway to restore electricity and remove debris. Hydro One's reporting hundreds of isolated outages in cottage country and eastern Ontario.
And the storm also caused significant damage in the Guelph area. Trees were snapped, businesses impacted by these powerful winds, gusting up to 100 kilometers an hour. There are no reports of any tornadoes related to the storm, and we certainly felt that wind and the rain here in the GTA last night as well.
It's 12 degrees, 542. This is Live at 5.
Well, the Maple Leafs are heading back to Ottawa after failing to get the job done in Game 5. That really hurt. How the team is preparing for Game 6. That's next. To the Battle of Ontario now. What went wrong last night? And how did we get here? Leaf fans are asking a lot of questions today after the team failed to defeat the Ottawa Senators last night.
Okay, CP24's Lindsay Biscaya joins us live from the newsroom. Okay, Lindsay, Lena and I were talking about this, but I don't know if a lot of people know that you're a big Leafs fan.
Yeah, I mean, I like the team. I like the game. I wouldn't say I'm such a big fan that I'm crying over this.
Okay, so you let me down with that one. Sorry about that.
I think I'm a realistic Leafs fan. There was a lot of realistic Leafs fans, but a lot of fans this year really felt like this team was different. I was at Game 1 at Maple Leaf Square, and a lot of fans were telling me this feels different. There's, a lot of good players. The core four really stepped up in the first game, and they said the team has a new head coach. So things were feeling different. They won the first 3 games. It was still feeling very different. And then that's when things really started to change. And I think Leafs fans now feeling incredibly desperate and very much feeling a little bit of deja vu, let's say, because this has happened before. And I think the Leafs fans really just want this team to get through, move on to the next round, and possibly even the round after that. So I think the issue that a lot of fans that I'm seeing online, a lot of fans are talking about the core four, right? Not stepping up. We're talking about Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. They were playing pretty well in the first few games, but last night maybe not playing as well as some fans hoped. And we've heard a lot of analysts saying the exact same thing, that the core four really needs to step up if the Leafs want to move on to the next round. Take a listen.
There's so much support now. I mean, you're talking about assistant coaches, you're talking about psychologists, you're whatever it may be. And you're kind of saying, okay, you got to kind of park that. And once the puck is dropped, I believe they do park that. But really comes down to same old problems. Been a team that scores copious amount of goals in the regular season, in big games, doesn't get them, and didn't last night. So, you mentioned about the special teams. Leafs were killing it. Now Ottawa is. Goaltending's been great on both sides. The big guns, who are the big guns during the regular season, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, simply have to be the big guns. They have to do it.
Now, the head coach, Craig Berube, actually responded to that today when media were asking him about the core four. And he said it's not just about the core four. It's not just a team of 4 players. It's about the whole team. The whole team needs to do better. That being said, I think there is still a lot of pressure. Obviously, in Toronto, the team is under it's in a bit of a pressure cooker here. And there's a lot of pressure on the core four to step up. So they still have a chance to do that. Lena and Bakari, Game 6 goes tomorrow in Ottawa at 7 p.m. A lot of eyes on that game for sure. Back to you.
Hey, Lindsay, the bus driver. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, Lindsay. It's 5:47, 12 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
U.S. President Donald Trump comments on Mark Carney ahead of an expected meeting at the White House. Those details next.
Welcome back. Vancouver police say a 22-month-old boy is among 3 people who remain in serious condition after the vehicle ramming attack that left 11 people dead.
And police say another 5 men, 2 women, they're still in hospital in critical condition following Saturday's attack at the Lapu Lapu Day Festival. So police have identified more than 200 witnesses of the deadly attacks. They're conducting a video canvass. This is spanning a 25-block radius. And police say that they're not investigating the attack as a hate crime, but as an indiscriminate act of violence.
And Vancouver's Mayor Ken Sim confirms that the man accused in the attack was under the care of a mental health care team at the time and on an extended leave from a hospital. While British Columbia's premier has launched a commission, the mayor really showed his frustration with the situation today.
We have gone through a bunch of incidents since we have come into office where a mental health issue led to a violent act. How many more times do we have to study this? So sure, come up with another commission, come up with another report. They're important, but let's come up with action now.
Well, Sim says that a mental health crisis It's turning into a public safety crisis, so he's calling for more support from the provincial and federal governments to tackle mental health issues.
Meantime, a vigil was held at Nathan Phillips Square last night honoring the victims of the Vancouver attack, and a candlelight vigil that's going to take place at Earl Bales Park this evening, and that's set to begin at 7 o'clock.
U.S. President Donald Trump commented on his conversation with Prime Minister Mark Carney during a meeting at the White House this afternoon.
Well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." You know, he was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. You know, it was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race, but he's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly, within the next week or less.
Now, the Prime Minister's office said during yesterday's phone call with Trump, both leaders agreed on the importance of Canada and the U.S. working together. We're still awaiting official word on when they'll meet in person for the first time.
And the Financial Accountability Office of Ontario says that the trade war with the U.S., it will lead to a modest recession in the province this year.
A new FAO report says if tariffs remain in place, Ontario's real GDP growth would slow to 0.6% this year, less than half the 1.7% growth expected if there were no tariffs. The FAO estimates that tariffs would result in 68,000 fewer jobs in Ontario this year and 119,000 fewer jobs next year.
Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy responded to the report. This was at Queen's Park today.
We are going to protect jobs and we're going to protect this economy. As I just said, not only interprovincial trade barriers, that's something we can do, and we can do that right now. And we've got Nova Scotia with us, New Brunswick. We're going to get other provinces on board with us, the federal government. But let's look at red tape and regulations that slows down building, nation-building type projects, ports and roads and pipelines and the Ring of Fire. So we've tabled a bill to get things, shovels in the ground faster. We can do that collectively. Nothing says don't build in Canada like Bill C-69, which is an impact assessment. Let's work together with the federal government. I think that's what the people of Canada want.
We are going to be putting forward solutions to the Premier and to the Minister on this file, based on fact and based on what has worked in other jurisdictions. An auto worker in the province of Ontario right now is looking for leadership from this Premier. They want to see investment to keep those businesses here, to keep that equipment here. Right now you have auto workers standing in front of trucks trying to keep those jobs here, trying to keep those equipment here. What we would do is stand with those workers, strategic investment to keep the jobs here. This makes sense for the entire economy in the long run, too, because Donald Trump and Doug Ford are not thinking about these workers.
And inflation is also expected to rise by 0.2% this year.
It's now 5:54, 12 degrees. This is Live at 5.
It's also the end of April. That means a few important reminders like springtime favorite arriving here in the city. That's coming up.
Welcome back. It's the final day for Toronto homeowners to submit their vacant home tax declaration.
Residential property owners have until 11:59 tonight, just before midnight, to tell the city whether their property is occupied or vacant. The vacant home tax rate, it is set at 3% of a property's assessed value. So declarations can be made by three ways: calling 311, in person at City Hall, or in person at any civic center. And the city says that properties are going to be deemed vacant if a declaration is not received by that deadline.
It's also tax deadline day across the country. Late tax filers could see a 5% penalty on their balance owing and an additional 1% for each full month they delay filing after the due date. Tax experts say it's still important to file your taxes on time, even if you can't pay the amount owing, in order to avoid an even higher bill from late filing fees. The deadline for self-employed workers to file, that's June 16th, so you still have a little bit more time. The CRA estimates it'll receive more than 20 million tax returns this year.
Okay, let's lighten this story up a little bit. Toronto's brief cherry blossom watching season is about to kick into high gear.
Yeah, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Well, Very nice. The city is predicting its sakura trees will reach peak bloom later this week due to rising temperatures. This is always so beautiful. Cherry blossoms typically only last between 4 to 10 days, depending on weather conditions, and they can be seen in several city parks, including Hyde Park, as well as the Exhibition Place grounds, along with some U of T and York University campuses. Always great to get a picture in front of these things.
All right, it's 5:59, 12 degrees. This is Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Thanks so much for watching and for joining us tonight. CTV News at 6 is coming up next.